For our audience, we sent a copy of some of the chapters for the readings and to bring the question for our speaker. So we have budgeted about 35 minutes for the Q&As later on. Each of you is supposed to, or bring at least one question, including the question I put in the chat or the slide. So I know you have questions per way. Please put them in the chat or save them later for the group discussion. And then the next, I would like to invite Dr. Marc Thomas. He also contributed a chapter to another book that I co-edited with Greg Malvo. I invited him to this session not because he wrote the chapters, but because of his current role as the Dean of Teaching Excellence at Oakland Community College in Michigan. And his role is more than publishing 35 books in a year. So Dr. Thomas, over to you for your brief remarks.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bista. And I'm particularly pleased to follow Dr. Chan because his comment about the perception of online learning being inferior, I think is going to flow nicely to what I'm going to share and the rest of our conversation. And at my college, which is a medium-sized community college in Michigan, we are seeing a huge influx of students who want online instruction. Our online classes are filling up quickly and filling up first, and our face-to-face classes are not. So it's an interesting dilemma we all have to think about, is to the extent to which we can meet the demand that students appear to be having for more online instruction. So thank you all for joining me and us today. There's three areas from my research I'd like to highlight. The first is the extent to which the traditional teaching and learning philosophies can guide us to better online instruction. The second, which was the core of my chapter, is how can our work with international students influence the growing need and interest in online instruction? And then third, of course, how does the quick switch we made during the pandemic to remote instruction, which could be online or it could be more of a Zoom-based instruction, how does that help us chart a course to the future? And I've nominated Chickering as the representative of traditional teaching philosophy, partly because I love him because he uses real words that we as educators can understand, but also anybody looking at this can understand. So on this slide, you'll see where I changed some of the verbs. So I've adapted what Chickering originally wrote. I mean, the research was in the 60s and 70s and then culminated in some publications in the 80s, but fostering connection between faculty and students is at the core of his work, and I think should be at the core of what we're thinking about as we think about how do we add more and more online instruction. So facilitating students connection and fostering collaboration among students using active learning, and then of course incorporating diversity and inclusion in the classroom. All of those things are still relevant, really, and I think really come to the core of what we should be thinking about for online instruction, which is connection and engagement. Second area of the research that my chapter touched on was really reflections from international students. How did they respond and cope with the very sudden switch to online instruction? And there was some relatively recent research done by Professor Tran from Australia, where she worked with and surveyed 400 international students and others about what they really want from, in particular, online instruction. And I'm encapsulating her, she had 4 or 5 different themes, but I'm putting them all in the area, oh, we can go to I think perhaps to the next slide now. I'm putting them all in the area of empathy to represent Dr. Tran's work. And I think of the work that she calls empathy with international students as starting with what we think of as diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, but taking it to the next level and really making sure students understand each other and work together to solve world problems. So that's another core area of the research I did. The third area, of course, is the the response that we as educators and the students had during the pandemic. I talked to several international students, did lots of research on it, and the work that I did has convinced me more so than in the past that it really is about connection between faculty and student. One hopes we're all doing that in our face-to-face classes. The question is the extent to which and how does it translate to online learning? My slide, I put a few things that students mentioned. They want Zoom, they want podcasts, they want online stuff to do, they want regular feedback. All of that stuff that we should be thinking about becomes more important with online instruction. So I'm really excited about the question that you all are contemplating. What strategies are you using right now to engage your students? My college has implemented an initiative called Help One More Student Stay. And we're asking each of our faculty members to do one thing they haven't done in the past, one thing that might help just one student stay. It could just be learning students' names or reaching out to students who have disappeared from class. So I'm happy to share the research and the practical stuff that I've run across, and I really am looking forward to hearing from the group today about strategies we're using to improve online teaching and learning. So thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. I appreciate it.